Suppose, rather, that the key to motivation was a harsh law Marcus Aurelius, the Stoic emperor, left behind for those daring enough to follow it. This is not a recommendation, it is a directive. Then what if it wasn't something one could feel or wait for, a rule that determines if you will rise to excellence or stay caught in mediocrity? Aurelius understood that real success is not about sitting back for a spark of inspiration to light your deeds. It's all about controlling oneself and accomplishing what is necessary even if you don't want to. Most people define motivation as a fickle illusion, an illusion that vanishes the instant you grab for it. He knew this. If followed, this legislation will either help you develop your strength or reveal your vulnerabilities for everyone to view. Your inactivity, your indecision, your failure to respect this rule, these will wreck your potential. Will you follow it, or will your dreams collapse under the weight of your own alibis, the law that divides the strong from the weak? Motivation does not feel like anything. Most of us believe motivation is something we wait for, a sensation that will emerge when the moment is appropriate. But Marcus Aurelius instructed us that inspiration is not about waiting to be felt. It's nothing that suddenly materializes when one feels so. Relying on emotions to motivate your behaviors can cause you to be always stuck in a loop of inertia. Motivation, if allowed to depend on feeling, is unpredictable. It ebbs and flows. When it fades, so does your motivation. Most people fall into this trap. They wait for the ideal time, the surge of enthusiasm, or the right mood to act. Not now. Yet, Aurelius recognized a bitter reality. Expecting motivation to locate you is a recipe for forgiveness. True motivation doesn't come from inspiration, it comes from deed. Regardless of how one feels, acting produces momentum. Motivation starts to follow once you start moving. The solution is to turn the script. Motivation should not wait on you. Start without it and let your motions be the spark igniting the flames. Starting, no matter how small, develops the discipline and motivation needed to advance, as well as the drive. The inspiration will then follow on its own. The act. Act first. Feel Turner values. Marcus Aurelius's merciless law is straightforward but strong. Act first, feel later. Aurelius recognized something few appreciate. Activity comes before inspiration, not the reverse. This is a hazardous misunderstanding. Many wait for the motivation feeling to show before they act. Aurelius, in his knowledge, understood that feelings change. They come and go according to the wind's direction. Waiting for motivation to ignite your activities will see you spend more time waiting than actual living. Motivation does not come to those who wait, it comes to those who act. Motivation starts to develop from the instant you act. It's like a machine needing a push to start functioning. Even in the tiniest of ways, once you start, the momentum begins to build. Every tiny move you make helps to drive you forward. This is the law of progress. Action breeds motivation. You are stuck without it. This rule cannot be changed. You will never fulfill your maximum without it. The person who waits for motivation is always stuck in a cycle of inactivity, whereas the person who acts first will have the drive to continue advancing. The option is obvious. Act first, feel later. Mastering this law enables you to determine your destiny instead of waiting for life to appoint your achievements. Overcoming opposition, the inner struggle. Hardest fight you will ever have is the one within oneself. Constantly rising to prevent you from acting, resistance offers a continuous force. In excuses, uncertainty, and fear, it speaks to you. Every time you start something, opposition is there, seeking to drag you back into complacency, into inactivity. The battle was familiar to Marcus Aurelius, the great self-discipline authority. He understood that overcoming resistance is a daily decision, not a one-off one. Every time you act, you are deciding to fight against the resistance trying to stop you. Though never simple, it is always needed. The law is straightforward. Fight resistance at all costs or else stagnate. Once you offer in resistance, you yield your capacity. Every defense, every reluctance is a triumph for the forces keeping you back. Rising demands you deliberately choose to battle, to press on, regardless of the opposition that will certainly arise. First, admit it is present. Then address this opposition and prevail always. Your brain generates justifications to avoid suffering. Don't be taken aback. Rather than tackling the resistance head-on, focus on the activity itself. Advance one after the other. Divide the big job into little, doable steps. Starting, however little, erodes the resistance. With practice, you start to realize the justifications for what they are. Vacuous hurdles. You beat them, you move ahead, and you grow in power every encounter. The real power of self-disciplinary. The law of action rests on discipline, which is itself the basis. Marcus Aurelius knew that drive, although temporary, is not the road to success. Discipline is unrelenting. This is what underlies a Stoic life. Discipline stays unchanged regardless of the situation. Motivation ebbs and flows. Aurelius stressed several times that inspiration is fickle. It cannot be relied on to direct you through the hardest times. However, founded on your will, discipline sees you through even the most difficult times. It compels you to operate even when your emotions or sensations impel you to cease. It calls on you to advance no matter how you are. Weak and subject to their emotions and impulses are those lacking discipline. Waiting for the perfect moment or feeling to advance, they let their emotions control their behavior. But in so doing, they postpone their own achievement and squander their abilities. True power is the capacity to act even without direction. It is the power of small, deliberate acts that, when done every day, create unstoppable force. Every deed, regardless of how little, helps your development. These regular increments over time will turn you into someone who no longer needs incentive to act. You do it simply, practically, by reflection now. This is the true quality Aurelius advocated for. Discipline helps you to conquer challenges, gain greatness, and oneself. Motivation comes and goes. Discipline is constant. Choose discipline and you enable your real capacity. The results of disregarding the law. Your weakness will become your cell if you reject this brutal rule. Every time you do not act, you pick for inertia, which in turn picks for weakness. Weakness is something you choose to act upon every time you hesitate. It is not a condition. To stay inactive is to encircle oneself in mediocrity and failure. You support the notion that success needs motivation by waiting for a feeling that will never come. Really, this inactivity keeps you from achieving your full potential. In reality, it becomes your worst enemy. Neglect of this rule results in serious consequences: time lost, unmet potential, and an existence governed by excuses. Waiting longer makes it more difficult to break free. Only by acting, irrespective of your emotions, can you break free of this cycle and stride into the life meant to be. Marcus Aurelius' law of motivation is simple but harsh. First act, later feel. It calls for action irrespective of how you feel, as it does not cater to your emotions or convenience. You have to obey this rule without exception if you are serious about becoming strong. Motivation is temporary, like a passing storm, but action and discipline are everlasting. They create momentum, change your personality, and bring you to destinations motivation by itself never could. The decision is yours. Will you conform to this rule and become the individual you were meant to be, or will you always be weak, immobilized by inaction and justifications? Greatness is not achieved by inspiration, but by continuous, deliberate effort. Subscribe now if you are prepared to welcome the merciless rule of motivation, free yourself of restrictions, and change your life. There is more knowledge to follow, knowledge that will drive you to overcome, to persevere, and to overcome the barriers in your path.